Hello, everybody. So today we've got the wonderful Peter from the UK. I was calling it America today, and I'm like, no, I've got that wrong.
No, it's the UK. It's that you can tell it's the UK if you're here because it's pouring with rain. It's dark and it's starting to get cold. And by the way, that's usually the summer. So, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
should also mention that I am a New Zealand citizen and I do have the passport. I should have brought it here to prove my
Yeah, really
provenance.
cool.
But I've spent 11 years there, two different sets of time. So yeah,
Awesome.
it's great to be talking to people in New Zealand for a change. It's really
Yeah,
nice,
yeah,
and it's great getting up at the different time of day. You guys, some of you, I guess, will be doing the same thing tomorrow morning for you, whereas it'll be the evening for me, when I'll have my all black shirt on, believe it or not. So I've
yeah,
got I've got my World Cup shirt, I've got the official one, and away we go. And a bit of a dodgy start, but I think we can do it.
yeah.
So
So
anyway,
what time is it there for you today, Peter? What time is it there now?
I'm literally 12 hours behind you.
Okay,
So
so
it's 8 a.m. Well, 8:07 at the moment.
yeah,
My computer's telling me it's 8:07, and I'm going to believe it.
yeah. You are an early riser though, aren't you?
Yeah, I've got a giant rescue dog. He's huge, and he gets me up at 5 a.m. and makes me take him for a walk. And I can't
Yeah,
refuse it because he's as big as a house, and he would drag me out of bed if I didn't just get up. So,
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah,
I think
we're walking in the pitch black dark in these fields, and anybody could like pounce on us and kill us, but there's nobody out there.
I was going to say if
Nobody's
you guys
daft
want to
enough to
see
get
that,
up at that time.
I was going to say you can friend Peter on Facebook and you'll see the dog and
Oh
the
God, yeah. Please do, please feel free, anybody. I mean, I
yeah,
should say that what we're going to talk about today, well, what I'm here to talk about today, and we could divert, but I am a hypnotist, being no doubt. And I work in hypnotherapy as well. But I also do stage tricks and the whole damn thing. And occasionally I'll do the odd corporate event and go around to tables of drunken people and get them to stick to the table and things like this and stuff. So yeah, I am a hypnotist, but I've been in this world of, I'm going to say magic because it encompasses lots of things that I've been involved in for over 40 years now. And because I am 65, just so that you know, I haven't started when I was like 2 years old. I have been around the block a little bit. So I started off with a ridiculous story of how I was dragged into and initiated into ceremonial magic. But when that exploded 3 years later, I moved off on my own and I was working with other things, and I ended up finding my way into shamanic practice, which the reason I'm here is because it's trance work. Well, what do we do? What do we do? We do trance work, don't we? Sometimes shamanic work can be very acceptable to clients, especially clients who may be a little afraid of the idea of a hypnotist controlling them, which I get. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes I've got people who are desperate to have an experience, but sometimes they're scared. So we can talk to them, we can tell them stories, and we can get them into a trance by telling stories. But really, where I want to take them is on a journey. And shamanic journeying is a very, very great trance experience. You may struggle sometimes to get people to believe in the truth of what that journey is, that it's external. But you can frame it in a different way for them, and you can say that they're going to be taken to a place where they'll investigate their own inner landscape. Because we know that unconsciously, our unconscious minds will speak in symbolic language, symbols, pictures, colors, also, sound, tone, mathematics. It speaks in all of these, its language is that. So we can get people, if we frame it correctly, to want to do this. And by the way, the other great thing about this is something that you can give them to take away. You can teach them how to actually access this when they leave your office so that whenever they need to enhance the experience they've had with you, they can go back in on their own, and we can teach them that they're exploring their own landscape. I mean, in shamanism, you're actually going out. You're going out into other worlds. I mean, there is a limitless number of cosmologies and geographies beyond the one that we are stuck in here, this illusion, which it is, that we're stuck in, this three-dimensional experience that we're having. There's loads and loads of things out there. How do I know this? Well, first of all, from experience, because I've done it and I do it all the time. Secondly, this has been around as long as there has been humans. How long have we had humans on this planet? Well, that's a question you want to ask yourself, and some people will say, oh, 30,000 years, blah, 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 and they'll talk about evolution, even though we can't find missing links. So, evolution is still only a theory, and it's one that's being disproven all the time. But nevertheless, if that's how people want to go, that they can go down that road. What we do know is that this practice has been going on forever. I mean, we see drawings now in Australia, wall paintings and things like this, that we know are way beyond 30,000 years old, way beyond. Even conventional science is now dating that way beyond that. And they're starting to talk about 100,000 years. But really, Aboriginal people in Australia, I'll call them that, because I grew up saying Aboriginal people, but, I don't know what they want to be called now. I mean, it only means from the origin. It's just a Latin compound word. Ab means from, and original, it speaks for itself. So that's all it is. It's not an offensive term. And you can talk about Aboriginal people from any part of the world, actually. But I'm digressing. I always digress. I apologize for this. But the fact of it is that this is ancient and it's proven. The really interesting thing for me about this history of shamanic practice, this idea of finding the resources you need to make what I'm going to call alchemical transformations and changes. Healing is another good word for it. But on a personal level, for other people, for other groups of people, for whole communities. And you go on the journey to find the resources. And we'll come into the journey process in a little while. Oh, by the way, I'll shut up. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I'm taking that as a no. I'll carry on then. So, by the way, I'm gold medal talker. I will never stop. So you must feel free to interrupt me. And, don't just put your hands up like this, like, oh, I want to speak. Just shout out and say, shut up, I've got a question. That'll be fantastic by me. I'm thick-skinned. I don't really worry about it. So anyway, this idea of shamanism, the really interesting thing for me is that all over the world, the process is exactly the same. From the Sami people in the Arctic of North Europe to the Eskimo people or Inuits, whichever you want to call them, in Alaska, the Arctic Circle, further to the west, certainly in the central Tunguska region of northern Siberia in Russia, all throughout Africa, all throughout the Dreamtime in Australia. Maori people, for certain, do all of this. So, we can talk about Terianga and spirit coming down from the north and you have to meet the spirits when you're going on this journey to self-initiate someone. I mean, we're using the word shaman, but obviously every culture has its own terminology for the work that people do, but it's always the same. Now, I don't know if you can spot it, but right behind me on the shelf there's a labyrinth. That image turns up all over the world. How? Because these people presumably couldn't have met each other and shared this information. So why is that like, a symbol that we find everywhere? It does have a value, by the way, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But that turns up everywhere. Lots of the symbology turns out to be universal as well. Carl Jung really identified that for us in the early 20th century as well, but it's been going on longer than Carl Jung was ever talking about it. So this universality is the same, and the processes in which people who we say practice shamanism, within their communities, the way that they go about this practice and this process is the same everywhere you go, everywhere in the world. It's the same practice. Now, that's really interesting, isn't it? That, as far as I'm concerned, and this is just me and just my opinion, although other people have the same opinion, that's enough proof to me that there's value in this, that there's something that's working, that it's the same the world over, and it's never changed. Here's the other thing. The culture of people has evolved over time. I mean, let's face it, we don't live the same lives that we would have done 500-600 years ago, 1,000 years ago. We have technology, we've moved on, we've changed the way we think about things and the way that we process things. But the shamanic process hasn't moved at all. In tens or hundreds of thousands of years, it has stayed the same in every culture. They haven't moved on and say, we'll do this. We've moved it on. We've moved it on since it was brought out of the wild and into our consciousness. Certainly in the late 1950s, early 60s, there's an anthropologist named Michael Harner, who's an American who spent lots and lots of time with the Jivaro and Canibo people in South America in the Peruvian Amazon basin. And he came out and he brought shamanism out to the West. And he was like, say, hang on, we've got something here that's got a very, very good healing process. But somebody named Stan Groff, who's a psychiatrist who'd been using LSD, he's one of the 6 psychiatrists that was given LSD to test in the 1950s. Once that became a Class A drug and he was no longer able to use it, he used shamanism to develop a process called holotropic breathwork, which you may want to look into. I've been on holotropic weekends and I found them life-changing. The experiences were life-changing. But the process involves sound rather than drugs. This is the great part. Despite what people say, the shamanic process in most cultures involves sound to change into an altered state of consciousness where we can actually do the work. In shamanism, the work is journeying. I mean, in hypnosis, you can make suggestions any way that you want to make suggestions. You can do parts work, you can do NLP timelines and things like this. But in shamanic work, you're going on a journey. You're going on a journey to find the resources that you need to hit the root of the problem and to bring back the resources that resolve the problem. That's what we do. So the shamanic work is, in my mind, more fun. It's a much more fun experience to be on. And as a practitioner, taking people through like a process of dynamic imagery, which I guess is what it is, I'm sitting there and it's like I'm watching a movie. They're telling me, they're relating back to me all the experiences that they're having and what they're seeing and what's happening. And it's like I'm watching a film. It's great. I should be paying them. I should be buying a ticket from them to watch this movie. But they come back and they bring things with them. And the great thing is, once they've learned this process, then they can actually take it back home with them and they can learn and practice and use it for themselves. It does take some practice, being no doubt, but it's a very, very simple process. To hit that altered state, one thing, again, that's absolutely the same all over the world is something that I'm going to call the tunnel. This is how you enter this state. Now, the tunnel could look very unique to every individual. It's not always the same tunnel. I find myself being taken down a whirlpool in the middle of a lake. Other people will see a cave. It can be, a lot of the times, it's something in nature that you've seen in your lifetime that then comes to you when you're asking for the entrance to this journey. But it could be like something that an animal digs in the ground, like a badger set or something like this, rabbit hole, whatever, or a hole in a tree. I mean, in Nordic culture, they have Yggdrasil, the tree of life, this great tree, and there's a hole in it, and you can walk through that, and then you can climb down the roots until you find yourself at the entrance to a tunnel, and off you go in the journey. The journey itself can be quite amazing. For me, it's not really. I mean, I'm breathing water. I guess that's amazing. But I find myself breathing water while I'm there till I get to the place where I need to go. Some people find they hit the entrance to the tunnel and they're immediately there at the other end. I mean, it's so quickly that you can hardly describe what's happened. And sometimes, however the tunnel starts, it might start becoming even. I mean, for a lot of people, the walls become circular or oval or ribbed, and sometimes people will see flashing neon colors between the ribs as they're making this progress. The progress is pretty universal, though. We're going to go through a tunnel and we're going to come out the other end in a different cosmology, certainly in a different geography. So you're in somewhere in an altered state of consciousness, and perhaps, if you want to see it that way, in a different dimension where things happen differently. And from there, you can move on. Now, I mean, obviously, and Justine knows that in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be running a journey training course, literally just to get people who want to do this work trained into how to find the tunnel and experience the tunnel. We're not going to experience the world beyond in this one. We're literally going to use practice after practice after practice so that people can see how to use it. And we're going to use drums. Here's one I prepared earlier. This is a drum I made. So this is English red deer hide over an wooden ash hoop. I don't think you can quite really see the wooden hoop in there. And it sounds like that. Lovely sound. Basically, again, this is pretty universal the world over. The rhythm that's going to take people down is very, very simple. In North America, in native cultures in North America, a lot of the times this is called the eagle heartbeat, and it's literally 3 to 4 beats per second. Like that. And the beat itself, that isn't the most important part. It's that after sound, that resonant sound. And usually within 10 to 15 minutes of experiencing this, anyone will go. Anyone will literally drop into an altered state, presuming that's what you want to do. I mean, obviously, if I'm walking through the streets doing this, people aren't just going to like flop down into nothing. But if that's your intention, within 10 to 15 minutes, everybody will go. They will change their state of consciousness, which is a great thing. And this is how drumming works. So it's that resonant sound that's literally the sound going through the hoop of the drum, that's taking you there. You'll find, if you practice this, that at some point, that sound, you really let the actual beat of the drum go, and you find yourself focusing on that resonant sound. And it sounds like, who else uses that sound? Okay, I'll say it. Buddhist meditation in the Far East. And they use as the sound that they use when they're dropping into meditation states. And that's like a one phoneme mantra that they're going to use to get themselves in there. Drumming does the same thing. It's interesting that works that way, but it does. So, any questions so far? No, nobody. Yeah, Justine.
What about when you're drumming yourself? Do you use drumming yourself to get into a state, or do you use a recording of yours?
Well, look, I'll use it myself for meditational purposes, because it does help me to do that. But you've got to keep drumming. There's only so much you can do. Now, in shamanic cultures, a shaman, I'm going to talk about that word in a second. A shaman will usually have a drummer, somebody else that does the drumming for them. Drumming, chanting, dancing, movement, everything is trance-inducing in those states. Now, for example, down in the Peruvian Amazon basin, the Jivaro people, a shaman in that culture will go into a room. The work is normally done at night. I mean, a dark space is considered to be the best place to be. What you don't want is distraction. So, your eyes will be covered usually, and the shaman will lie down on the floor. Maybe a blanket there, but usually they're not propped up with a big, nice pillow. Your head's back onto the floor. You can put something down there like a towel if you want to do it this way, just to protect your head. But the reason for that is it opens up your breathing pathways, because they're going to breathe as well. They're going to use breathing as an exercise. Deep breathing, don't strain, but just breathe nice and deep. And basically, you're going to hyperventilate at some point while the drumming is going on. So, and at that point, you're going to be taken in. So this is a practice that they do. But having other people doing the drumming is quite important. What I've done here is I've recorded, like 30-minute segments, and I just play it on a loop when I'm doing the work in here for me. So that I don't have to sit there playing a drum, and I don't have to get somebody else in here. I just play it through a sound system that I've got in here. If you were playing this electronically, through your computer or something like that, I would suggest that you use headphones, because a computer's speakers tend to be on the high pitch side, and you won't experience the resonant sound that's coming from a drum. So using headphones plugged into your computer or your phone, you'll get the full sound. For me, in here, I've just got an amplifier and 6 speakers and subwoofers and God knows what all around the room to make that experience work. But for you, you don't have to do that. You can just use headphones, and headphones will do the job. One thing, I don't know, you may have heard of something called binaural beats, where we have sounds that are literally just milliseconds out of synchronization. So without you realizing it, it is actually distracting the conscious mind and allowing access to the unconscious mind. And the sound that goes around the hoop inside a drum is binaural. So it's doing that job too. So I was going to talk about that word shaman. That word shaman, which I find, and this is my problem, nobody else's, it's my issue. I find it a problem because it's one word that's referring to people that do the same work all over the world. However, it comes from a language. It's a Siberian dialect from the Tunguska region of central northern Siberia, and what they do to initiate into become a shaman within their culture. And by the way, they can't go to university and do this. I mean, you make the choice, and it's a natural process, but it involves going out into the wild for a long time and surviving there. And some people don't survive that process. They die out there. They don't come back. So it's a dangerous process. So I always feel like, calling yourself a shaman, and that's why I've got this website called Suburban Shamanism. I make the difference. I'm not going to pretend that I've been out into the wilderness and had a near-death experience and come back. It's just not the case at all. I live in the suburbs in a nice, neat little area, which is always where I've lived. And so I'm not making any pretense on it. But that word comes from there, and their practice, like I said, it's quite dangerous. Who's the most famous of the Tunguska shaman? That would be Rasputin. And people have probably heard of Rasputin, but be in no doubt that while he's called in our culture the mad monk, monk of what? I mean, Orthodox Christianity in Russia, you wouldn't have been able to avoid it very much, but his real practices were shamanic, transformational, alchemical, hypnotic. I mean, there is no doubt that he could capture everybody and put them under a spell. I mean, the historical documents are saying exactly that. Difficult to kill? That's right, because he could manage his own life. He could manage his own rhythms of life. Try to poison him. That didn't work. It took a lot to kill him when they wanted to kill him. So this is a shaman. I mean, other famous shamans, Crazy Horse, up in the North American plains, Sitting Bull, people like that. Black Elk is the one who's, I mean, he doesn't write the books. Anthropologists recorded him talking about what he does, and Black Elk, the books on Black Elk Speaks and things like that, and the one about the pipe. They're really interesting reads, and they involve actual physical experience. What else do you need to be a shaman? You need a guide. You need to work with a guide. So you need to know how to connect with your guide. Usually, shaman in deep shamanic cultures will work with more than one. They'll definitely have several either guides or helpers, but their guide will be with them. And the guide can take any form. I mean, it could be in a human form that they connect with this guide, but it could be an animal. We'll talk about power animals too. And the guide could be just a feeling that you have, something that connects with you and literally guides you, and so that it feels like it's your intuition. But you understand that there is something beyond you that is connecting with your intuitive self, so that you then get the message of which direction to take, what you need to do, what you need to see, where you need to contact other beings. On a shamanic journey, you can find yourself communicating with plants, trees, animals, stars, anything. Anything. It's not like being in this world. And this is the beauty of it. This is how, for people who think that this is all hocus pocus, and I understand we live in a world where we've been programmed to believe in the cult of science, but if you don't want to go down that road, this is where we tell them what we do know, and where science will kind of back this up for them, if science is what they need to believe, is that unconsciously we communicate in symbols and other forms of language, like colors and so on, like I mentioned before, pictures and images and so on. And so we can tell them that if you're going to do this work, if you're going to use it for them, because if you find that it'll be easy for them, then you can tell them that they're going on this inner journey where they find their own resources, and that their unconscious mind will communicate with them and guide them on this inner journey using symbolism, so that they'll actually have this experience. It depends on how you want to frame it. Now, yes, you can do real shamanism internally. You can go on an inner journey, but literally you're in a cage then. You've got to hope. You've got to hope that all the resources that you need will be there. You'll find them easily. And most of the time you will. But we do have what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, which is a very small term for something that's very, very expansive beyond our inner selves. And we are connected with everything. Even now, and I come back to science, and I'll certainly come back to mathematics. People at the cutting edge of mathematics are telling us now that there is just this one field of energy, and it's like, well, what we are within that field of energy are like blobs of consciousness, but we are connected to everything. It's whether or not we dare step outside and discover the things that are beyond the little cage that we find ourselves in a three-dimensional experience. You don't want to talk to your clients like that, because that sounds a little frightening. But if you want to use shamanic work, and I'm going to come to it in a second, with clients, it can be really fascinating by eliciting the objects that represent their problem, getting them to elicit objects that represent the solution. And I'll give you this for free. If you get them to see an object that represents the problem, I mean, I'm going a little quicker than I should with this, but you can see the object that you can hold in one hand. What does it look like? What is it? Can you tell what it is? Sometimes it is an object that they know. Oh, I'm holding a candlestick or whatever the heck. Okay, is it heavy? Is it light? You've done all this NLP stuff. I'm sure most of you will have done all of this NLP stuff. You're going to ask the same questions. But then you're going to get another object that's going to represent the solution. Like I say, I'm speeding this up just so I can tell it now. And what I'm going to get them to do is I'm going to ask them if the problem object, how does that feel about moving over to meet the solution? Quite often it won't want to go. It will not want to go there. But sometimes it will, and that's great. I'll get them to ask the problem object, how do you feel about allowing the solution object to come and meet you? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes it takes a little negotiation, and sometimes they meet in the middle. But they will eventually meet. Like I say, I'm missing parts of the process out. You have to know how to manage the conversation here to get that to happen sometimes. Sometimes it's very easy. It's like, yeah, it's fine, I'll go. But this is the beauty of it. The solution that will then evolve is a transformation. It's an alchemical process, because what happens when these two objects meet? Something else is created, usually. And you just ask them, what's happening when those two meet? What's happening? And leave it with them. Leave it with them. Silence is golden in this instance. And you stay silent and you won't talk. And you'll let it happen. And eventually you may well see a shift. You may actually see a physical shift. You can see people, or they'll cough or something like this. And it's like, what's happening? And those two objects have become something else. And that something else represents them stepping forward out of the problem, no longer needing the solution, but with the freedom to find a different path than the one that they've been on, where they've been suffering, where they've been held back. So this is how you can use this shamanic process to help clients. Now, I don't just have them sitting there with their eyes closed and saying, see an object in your right hand, see an object in your left hand. I'm taking them on a journey to find it. So they're going to go. I'm going to have them see a tunnel in front of them, see something in nature, something that they're happy to enter. Sometimes people will say, yeah, but I'm scared. I say, well, okay. Imagine what it's like for that tunnel to look like something welcoming, something that you really want to explore. What does it look like? Let them tell you. Let them then form and forge their own tunnel, one that they don't mind going into. And that's great, because obviously we're then using neuroplasticity. If we get them to do this again and again and again, they're creating that pathway in their brain. It's a physical pathway, and we know that neuroplasticity is a scientific thing that we actually know happens. So we can get them to create that by going through this process again and again and again. And I'll take them in there, and it's okay. When you've come to the end of the tunnel, what do you see? Before you step out there, what does the landscape look like? And I'll have them describe it to me. And then I'll take them on a journey. But most of that journey, I'm not telling them. This is not a guided meditation. I'm not a fan of guided meditation because, from my point of view, when somebody tells you, oh, you are now seeing an oak tree, am I? Really? Am I? Or, this is what it looks like. And now you feel cold as your feet step into the water of the stream. And don't tell me. Allow me to know how I feel. Allow me to see what I see. So if I take people in groups on journeys, which sometimes I do, I haven't done it recently. I'm going to have to start doing this again. But when I do, everybody has a different journey experience. And as I'm guiding people through it, like I say, I'm always having the experience as well. I'm in a trance when I'm doing this stuff. And really, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm having my experiences, they're having theirs, but they're all seeing things differently. I'll say, you're walking through um, trees. Maybe it's a forest. I'm not going to tell them whether it's a pine forest, whether it's a deciduous forest, whether it's, oh God, the native bush in New Zealand that I used to walk through every day with my 2 previous dogs. My goodness, the magic in there was unbelievable. The stream down below me and those trees that would come into view and what they start meaning to you. So let them see what they want to see. It's really important that you allow that to happen. So making sure that you guide them without telling them is a skill set that I'm pretty certain that we're all aware of. Everyone listening to this is probably aware of that. I'm not a practitioner of clean language. It's very complex to go through the whole process of becoming qualified in it. But I like to use clean language. In other words, I like to ask questions that allow the answer to come from them, where I'm not pushing them in any direction. But I will get them to a place. I will get them to a place where this is where you're going to look around and you're going to see an object. Pick it up. This is the object that represents your problem. Which hand did you use? Left or right to pick it up? I'm not even going to tell them which hand it's in. What's that to me? But that will have a meaning for them. And just asking that question will start stimulating something within them as well. So I just use this process. But what they're seeing is a movie where they're the star. They're the star actor. On these journeys, they can see other objects. Sometimes I've done things with groups, for example. I had a group and I've said, well, okay, what do we want to do today? What do we want to find in the work we're going to do? And it's like success. Okay, success. I can remember this one really well. And I said, okay, somebody come up with an object that represents success. And people were like, thinking about it. And this guy just said, an Oscar. So, yeah, well, I guess it does represent success if you're in that business. And on the journey, as they were on this particular one, they were wandering through a forest. And I just said, I just quickly said, and notice as you look down at the base of a tree, you see that golden Oscar. And you understand what that means for you as you continue on that journey. I didn't get them to pick it up, and I left it at that. That's probably one of the few times where I will put an object into the process, but it's one that they've already elicited for themselves, and they'd all agreed that represented success. So it wasn't me that invented that for them. Somebody within that group and the rest of the group agreed, yeah, that represents success. That's a good one for me. So I could actually pop that into the journey story. But usually I don't do things like that. Usually I let them do it. Does this make sense to anybody? Or does it just sound nuts? Because I understand that, it's not everybody's cup of tea to do this kind of dynamic imagery work. I think the important thing is, first of all, how you frame it to the people that you're working with. I think that's the most important part, because what you want is them to have that belief in what you're doing with them, and to have an interest in it, a fascination. So framing it isn't as difficult as it sounds. Once you explain, unconscious mind speaks better using symbols, images, sounds, colors, and so on and so on and so on, and explain, that Carl Jung, the great psychologist and psychoanalyst of the early 20th century, has actually mapped this for us, and that some of the images will be unique to them, but some of them will be universal, and we're not going to analyze. When they come out of the journey, sure, I'm quite happy to talk to them about what they saw, but I'm not going to analyze it for them, even though I could. So we don't need to. And you just tell them your unconscious mind knows exactly the journey you've been on, and it will process all the experiences you've had on that journey in exactly the right way that brings you to your solution. And that could be now, it could be, and usually people are feeling better already when they come out. It's like, wow, that was amazing. And test it. Test it with the problem. Try to get them to feel the problem again. How easy is it for you to feel that problem now? Difficult. You'll be surprised at how much that happens. And then obviously you're going to future pace that. And then over the next few days, as you recall that symbol of success, that symbol of change, that symbol of transformation, when you see those two objects come together, sometimes just leave them with the solution object. I will usually have them, once they've come out of the journey, I never take them out of the trance at that point. They can come out, and I don't say stay in a trance. I don't say you're going to come out of it. I'll just have them come out of the journey, and I'll say, okay, allow the images to fade. Now, in shamanic work, in real shamanic work, you're going to come back. You're going to come back the way that you went in, always. And because time and space don't really have an existence or function outside of our 3D existence, you can be from one place to another instantly, and you can come back very, very quickly, just having like spotlight images of things that you've passed and experienced on the journey, and you can be back in seconds, sometimes instantly. But I don't do that for them. I'll just tell them to allow the scene to fade while they retain the feeling and the emotions that they've just gained. So when they come out and they open their eyes, they're back in this world, but they still feel what they felt when the solution came to them during the journey. You see what I mean? This is not difficult to do. You'll find that clients really get involved in this if you're involved with it. So it's a process that we as hypnotists can use because it literally involves trance. Quite often, I will put them into a trance before we start the journey. We'll do trance work, and God knows whatever induction is right for the person that's in front of you. I don't mind doing physical stuff and sleep now stuff and what have you, but sometimes it's just an Elman thing will do. Sometimes it's even just easy enough to say, okay, take a nice comfortable breath and just allow your eyes to close as you begin to relax. And with your eyes closed, it's easy to relax. You know the process, but I never take more than a minute or two taking people deep, because then I'm going to get them to find the tunnel and then go down the tunnel. And I've already prepared them to understand how the journey begins with the tunnel. When they've come back, I'll go through 2 or 3 times a process for them to learn how to find the tunnel for themselves. I do often ask them, well, not ask them, I usually suggest that maybe when they step into the tunnel, or even before they step in, when they see the entrance to it, they'll start hearing drumbeat. And I'll play them drumbeat. I'll say maybe something like this. Won't that be great? Won't that be exciting? I mean, is it? I don't know. But I always pose it as a suggestive question, so I'll leave them with it. And then they can go in. Because then when I teach them how to do it, I'm going to show them that drum will help them do this very, very quickly. And the more they practice it, the less they need anything else. People who practice shamanism as part of their culture, as part of what their culture exists around, they can often just drop in. Australia is the best place to go for this. For the very few people who are left that literally live that lifestyle, that old natural lifestyle, you find that they are living their entire lives with 1 foot in the dream time and 1 foot in this dimension. Anthropologists that have worked in the Northern Territories and out in the Western Desert with people, and they'll say, well, it's difficult to understand their languages and dialects anyway. So, but even if you do, and you come across some people having a conversation, it's really hard to know whether they're talking about things that they've experienced in the dream time or things that they've experienced here, because even within one sentence, they can shift between dream time and here. It's just like it's really complex. For them, it's not complex. This is how they live. So, we've got to keep it much more simple for ourselves and for the people we work with. So I make it easy for them to learn how to do it, and I'll use drumming as something that will spark a stimulation in their minds that we are leaving the conscious world, we're now going into an unconscious experience. Depending on who they are and what they needed to hear, they can be experiencing a journey beyond their inner self, or if they need to be comfortable and not have the fear of going out into the unknown, then we can tell them that it's their own inner landscape that they're going to experience, and that's one that they've always carried within them. It's always there, so there's nothing to be afraid of there. There really isn't. There are other things, there are other aspects that we can talk about in shamanic journeying, but realistically, to use it in hypnosis practice, in hypnotherapy practice, this is all you need to know. Not really much more. I guess finding how to find a guide, how to find power animals. If people are lost, if one of the things that people come to and they say they're lost, if you went to a shamanic culture and you told a shaman that, they would know instantly that what's happened is you've become disconnected from your power animal, the animal that contains all of the attributes that make up who you are. And they would go out and find it and reconnect it for you. We can do that sort of thing. I mean, obviously, we don't have a lot of time. We can't train in that now. I'm going to be running those training programs. Like I'm starting off with the tunnel one, but I am going to be running a series of these little training programs so that anybody that's interested in it can go through the full process. If you journey, if you have a guide, if you have a power animal, those three things, you're a shaman. You can call yourself a shaman if you want to. If you're a woman, you shouldn't. Why? Because the language that shaman comes from is an inflected language. So a woman would be a shamanka. A shamanka. Now, interestingly, is it interesting? Well, I'm going to say it anyway. The Tunguska, notice the ending of that language, Tunguska. The land is seen as a feminine attribute of where we live, right? It's seen as that. Now, Russia doesn't talk about its country being the fatherland. Russia, it's always the motherland. So it's no surprise to hear that the cultures within that huge, vast land area all see that land as feminine, and that they've put on the back of their inflected languages something that tells you that when we refer to the name of the land, we're referring to a feminine attribute of our life experience. Now, everything has a duality. So certainly in a lot of European pagan cultures, these neo-pagans are all worshipping the moon goddess and everything else. And they talk about she and this when they talk about the moon. I won't do it, even though I work with the moon's feminine attributes just in that way, because I go back to my Celtic roots. The work I do is Celtic more than anything. But there are loads of cultures around the world that see the moon as masculine. Nordic, for example, Viking cultures do. Aztec and Central American cultures do. Japanese and others in the Far East. So we have to understand that just because we work with one aspect of something in the natural world, it doesn't mean that there isn't another. You can't have a one-sided coin. Certainly not here in the three-dimensional world. So, always understand that when you're working with something, you can choose to work with one aspect of it, and that really is great to do, but there is another side to that coin that you're working with. And maybe someday, if you actually accept that, you may find that you need to access that too. So, just that. I think, shall I wrap that up now? We've been going for nearly an hour and I haven't stopped. because maybe we want to talk about this. Maybe we want a discussion. Maybe people have got things to say or ask or whatever.
Yeah, it's very
Anyway,
cool information. Real cool.
I've really enjoyed being here, and it's great because I've had the feeling of New Zealand with me, and I do feel like I'm going through this. But honestly, the place I used to go, it, I mean, obviously on the North Shore of Auckland is where I lived when I was over there, but there's this incredible bushland that you can enter into, and the trees were like gigantic. The pathway is taking me up. There's a huge slope down to the left, and it was curving and turning this pathway. The ferns were gigantic, and they're over you, and you can hear the birds, the tuis, and everything else, and it was brilliant. But I can remember one. There was always one corner, and you come around, and you see one tree comes into view. And as I carry on walking, there's a second tree that comes into view. I'm thinking, oh my God, that's the high priestess from the tarot. That's card 2. But the high priestess is the 3rd card in the series because there's a 0 at the beginning and it should go at the end as well. And then suddenly I'm walking and another 3rd one appears and there they are. And it's like, that sends shivers through me. And then I would find other things on that journey that would take me through the whole of the major arcana of the tarot as I'm going through it. And I miss that walk. I really do. But it's been great feeling like I'm in New Zealand with you guys. It's been brilliant. So that's been wonderful. Thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for not shutting me up.
It's been awesome having you. What I have done, guys, is I've shared the link in the chat. If you
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and oh my God, I'm just gonna say it. This is like £20. I'm sorry, but this is like incredible value to sit in and go and do this this journey learning. It's amazing. It's something to click on and look at. And I'm gonna be there. Can't wait. I can't wait.
The funny thing is, I mean, some people have said, well, you're not charging very much for this. I'm not doing it to make a fortune. And the reason that I'm charging money at all is because people don't turn up if it's free.
That's true. Yes.
It's absolutely.
Yes.
When I did if you did book onto this one that's happening on the 18th of October, this first one, this tunnel one, you'll get access to the free one that I did 2 weeks ago, Justine. I think it's 2 or 3 weeks ago. Anyway, when I put that out there that I was going to do this for hypnotists and hypnotherapists only, and people would come in and say, "Oh, are you recording this? I'd like the recording of it." No, I'm bloody not. I did record it, but I wasn't going to tell that because I've had the experience, and I'm sure that some of you guys have, that if I do something for you, oh yeah, I'll sign up, I'll register, and then you end up with like you and one other person. Whereas I wanted people to be there. I wanted people to come back, and I wanted the energy to be shared, if nothing else, so that I'm not literally just talking to some camera that's sitting in front of me.
I was going to say I was there, but I was asleep, and I had the most amazing journeys. Like I was on a horse with wings, and there was eagles, and everything he was saying, because it was in the middle of the night or something for me. I just went on anyway and clicked it on and went back to sleep. Yeah. And I remembered most of it. I had the most amazing time, but I wasn't on Zoom. I was in some journeying land doing crazy things.
And that's where you want to be. And you can do that content free because you're being given images that your unconscious mind says are important to you for something in your life at that point. I should mention that I'm running this thing twice. The one we've just been talking about, this tunnel journeying one, because I'm doing one for here in Europe and the Americas, but I get fed up of people having to like twist their lives around to fit in with one time. So I am doing it the previous day to the European one. I'm doing it at this sort of time. So it'll be 7 p.m. New Zealand time to make it easy for people in New Zealand and Australia, because why won't I enjoy doing that twice? I will. And why is it wrong to help people to have an easier process. You don't want to get out of bed, take the kids to school, have a cup of coffee. Oh no, I've got to go on a shamanic journey. How fantastic. Wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be nicer to just do this as something to look forward to at the end of your day? I think so anyway. It'll run for about 2 hours, I'm guessing.
Awesome. So yeah.
Unless somebody refuses to shut me up, in which case maybe it'll be 6 a.m. the next morning before I stop. You know what I'm like.
So, well, I'll stop the recording here and just say thank you, and then we can keep on chatting. So thank you so much, Peter. And for people listening, the link to the workshop coming up will be down below. I'll just press stop.